Hey guys, today we're making a festive Christmas brunch, and the best part is, most of it can be made in advance. And special thanks to my friends at the Inspired Home website for sponsoring and collaborating with me on these holiday menus. If you're not familiar with the Inspired Home website, I encourage you to head on over there and check it out. There you will find great ideas for the home, from recipes and design trends to organizational tips and wellness advice. You'll also get some great ideas for new products for the home. There you will also find all of the printable recipes for this menu, as well as more information on the products I'll be using in this episode. Okay, let me show you how to make one fantastic Christmas brunch. We're gonna kick things off with my cranberry orange crumb cake, a delicious breakfast treat that's perfect to serve with morning coffee or hot cocoa. Then I'm gonna show you how to create an easy oatmeal bar, a great option for something warm and comforting on a chilly winter's morning. Then it's on to the main event, my Italian egg bake that is as light as a souffle and loaded with Italian sausage, red peppers, and mozzarella cheese. Then my crispy hash brown cups with Parmesan cheese and green onions. And then for a bit of decadence, my maple-glazed bacon with fresh rosemary. It's a delicious menu that pleases just about everybody, and in my game plan at the end of the show, I'm going to show you how to pull it all off with ease, even with all the chaos of Christmas morning. Let me show you how to put it together. So my girls right now are 11 and 7, and so I've got a few family Christmases under my belt. And one of the things that I have learned throughout the years is that Christmas brunch really works best as a two-part buffet. Meaning you need to have something when everybody gets up and they're sort of hungry and they need something in their tummies before they start opening up the gifts. And then the second part is really something a little bit more substantial that'll keep them going until dinner time. So I'm going to show you how to break this buffet into two parts. So for the first part of this buffet, I like to serve my cranberry crumb cake and an oatmeal bar because it's easy for people to serve themselves and it's also really filling and healthy to keep them going. And the second part is something a little bit more substantial, and that I like to serve about an hour later. And for that, we're gonna serve eggs and bacon and hash browns. That will certainly do the trick. All right, so let's get to the crumb cake. So the first thing we're gonna do in a large bowl is add 4 eggs. To that, you're gonna add a cup of vegetable oil, a half a cup of white sugar, and a half a cup of brown sugar, the zest of 1 orange, and then you can cut that orange and add the juice as well, a half a cup of water, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then you can just whisk that all together until everything is combined, and then set that aside, and then we're gonna prepare the dry ingredients. So in a smaller bowl, you're going to add 2 2/3 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a teaspoon of salt, and 1 1/4 teaspoons of ground cloves. I really love the ground cloves this time of year. There's something that is so Christmassy about cloves. This spice also pairs so beautifully with the cranberry and orange as well. Just screams Christmas. So you can whisk those dry ingredients together until they're all combined, and then you're going to add this flour mixture to your wet ingredients a little bit at a time, just until everything is well incorporated. And then you're gonna add a cup and a half of fresh cranberries. Now to bake our crumb cake, we're going to be using an angel food cake pan. And I really love this one by Good Cook because it has a removable bottom, which really makes releasing the cake super easy. I also like this pan because of its non-stick surface. I think a non-stick pan for something like a crumb cake or an angel food cake is pretty critical. And then for a little added security, I do like to spray this pan with a little baking spray as well. And then just take a pastry brush and make sure it's all well distributed. Then we're going to pour our batter into the pan. And I like to just pour it from one side, so pick a side and let gravity do the work for you. Because what will end up happening is that batter will just naturally distribute itself all along the pan in an even layer, and you don't even have to touch it. You can set that aside, and now I'm gonna show you how to make that delicious crumb topping. So in a small bowl, you're going to add half a cup of all-purpose flour, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, a pinch of salt, 2 tablespoons of white sugar, and 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And you can whisk that all up until everything is combined, and then to that, we're going to add 5 tablespoons of melted butter. And as you mix that up, you'll start to see a really beautiful crumble form. And then at this stage, we're gonna add 1/3 cup of chopped pecans, and then you can mix that up. And then once everything is sort of mixed together, I do like to go in there with my hands and just kind of break up the crumble so it's in nice sort of crumbly pieces. And then we're gonna take the crumble and just sprinkle it all over the cake batter. See, and now we're all ready to go. So now we're gonna bake this at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 50 to 55 minutes. You just wanna make sure that a skewer comes out clean. I do like to use a skewer because it's a pretty deep pan. And then you can let it cool on your cooktop. Then you can release your cake and see how easy the removable bottom is. So handy. And then you're gonna put it on a cooling rack. And then I do like to dust it ever so slightly with a little bit of powdered sugar. Then we're gonna transfer it to our cake stand. And to do that, I love these fabulous cake lifters. I think they're super easy for transferring big cakes like this. And the one that I'm using here is by Trudeau. It works for cakes up to 12 inches, and you can also use it for pizza too. And when you cut into this cake, you will see the beautiful texture that it has. It is so moist and light on the inside, and then you've got that crunchy crumble on the outside, studded with those beautiful cranberries and the flavor of the orange and the cloves. It is the perfect Christmas morning cake. So next up, let me show you how to put together an oatmeal bar. I love this idea, especially in the wintertime when it's cold and chilly on a Christmas morning, and it's just so filling too. The other nice thing about this dish is you can prep it all in advance and get all the cooking out of the way. And then all you have to do on Christmas morning is heat it up and put it in the slow cooker. Let me show you how to tackle the prep. So there's a lot of ways to prepare overnight oats. This is my favorite method because I think that it really lessens the cooking time on Christmas Day, which, let's face it, with all that chaos, you really need things to be easy. Now I'm using steel cut oats, which I think is a better way to go for something that you want to keep warm in a slow cooker because they really just get better the longer they warm and sit there, unlike traditional oats, which can get a little clumpy and gluey. So preference is yours, but I really like the steel cut. So the night before, you're going to take out a large stock pot or a Dutch oven. You're going to add 2 cups of the steel cut oats and 7.5 cups of water. You're just gonna bring that to a boil, and as soon as it starts bubbling, then you can turn it down to a simmer, cover, and cook for 2 minutes. And then to that, you're gonna add 1.5 cups of diced apple. And then you're gonna keep the cover on. You just wanna let it cool long enough so that you can actually handle it because your pot's gonna be pretty hot. And during this cooling period, 10, 15 minutes, the oats are gonna also kind of cook in that hot liquid and give them a head start. Then you're gonna pop it in your fridge overnight, and then when you wake up the next morning and you release the lid, you will see you will have these beautiful fluffy oats, and all you have to do is heat them up. Now for a buffet, we're gonna keep these warm in our slow cooker on low, but you don't wanna take the cold oats and put them in the slow cooker and turn it on because this has a ceramic insert, and I think that could probably crack if you did that. So it definitely says in the user instructions not to do that. So we're not gonna do that. But I also find that it's good to just get them a head start anyway and make them nice and hot, so by the time they hit the slow cooker, it's really just keeping it at temperature. Plus we wanna flavor our oats with a few things as well. We're going to add half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of vanilla, and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. This will just give them a nice sort of warming flavor without putting too much flavor on top because I do like people to add their own toppings depending on their taste. And then once they're ready to go, you can transfer to your slow cooker, and I'm using the All-Clad 4-quart slow cooker. And I love this design because I think it's a beautiful piece that you can put on a buffet that doesn't look out of place. I also think this model is super easy to use because the control panel is really intuitive. It has a time control, which will keep things cooking for anywhere from 4 to 20 hours, and then automatically kicks into the warming cycle for up to 6 hours. Then once your oatmeal is in your slow cooker, you can also set out an array of toppings. And in the recipe, I've given you a full laundry list of toppings that I think would be great with this. But here are some of my favorites. I like to set out some butter, some raisins, a little brown sugar, some heavy cream, or you could also use milk, coconut flakes, walnuts. And then I also like to set out some cinnamon sticks because I think it's a really lovely thing to be able to scoop out some of that oatmeal. I like to then top with a little bit of butter, some brown sugar, raisins, because you know I love my raisins, and then add a little cinnamon stick. And then people can kind of stir it all together with the cinnamon stick, and it just looks really pretty and festive. So there you go, part 1 of this buffet ready to go. We have our delicious cranberry crumb cake with our coffee, maybe set out some juice, and then we've got our oatmeal all warm and toasty, ready to go with all of those toppings. It's the perfect way to greet your family once they start to rise and shine on Christmas morning. so now on to the main event, my Italian egg bake. I love this recipe because thanks to my secret ingredient, these eggs are as light as a souffle. It's also super filling because you've got the sausage and the cheese and then the red peppers and that fresh basil make it so Christmassy too. All right, let me show you how to make it. So the first thing we want to do is saute up our sausage. So I'm working with Italian pork sausage, but you could also use chicken sausage or turkey sausage, whatever you like. And we're going to add a tablespoon of olive oil into a large skillet and then remove the sausage from its casing and then saute them up, just breaking them with a wooden spoon until they're nice bite-sized pieces. You want to make sure at this stage that the sausage is really cooked through and browned on all sides. And as your sausage is browning, I do like to add a little bit more seasoning to it. So I typically will do a half a teaspoon of just Italian seasoning, which is a blend of dried basil, dried oregano, dried parsley. So if you didn't have Italian seasoning, you could use a half a teaspoon of any of those herbs. And then I also like to throw in a quarter teaspoon of fennel seeds. I think there's a really nice flavor combination between the sausage and the fennel. Now, if you don't have fennel seeds at home, don't go out and buy a whole jar just for a quarter teaspoon for this recipe. It'll still be really good without it, but if you had it, it's a good thing to throw in. Then once your sausage is fully cooked through, you can transfer it with a slotted spoon and allow it to drain on a plate with a paper towel. And then we're gonna put together the egg batter. So in a large bowl, you're going to crack in 12 eggs. There's a lot of eggs, but this does feed anywhere from 8 to 12 people. Then here comes the secret ingredient. We're going to add 16 ounces of cottage cheese, which is a bit of a strange thing to add to an egg bake, but I always love to add it because it makes these egg bakes so light and fluffy, much like a souffle. And then we're also gonna add a quarter cup of melted butter, a third of a cup of flour, which is also gonna give our egg bake a really nice texture and give it a little bit of structure. A teaspoon of baking soda, and a half a teaspoon of salt, and some freshly cracked pepper. Then you can whisk that all up until everything is combined, and then we're gonna add our fillings. So we're gonna add in our sausage, and then you're also gonna add half a cup of chopped roasted red peppers, and a cup of shredded mozzarella cheese. And then you can whisk that up. So now our batter is ready to go. Now I really like to serve these egg bakes in large braziers because I find that they're really low and shallow and large enough to feed a crowd. They also come with lids which make them really serviceable on your buffet if you want to keep your eggs warm. And this one from Le Creuset is just so beautiful and festive for Christmas morning. I love the bright red cherry color and the lid has that gorgeous gold knob. It's just the perfect festive centerpiece for your Christmas buffet. Braziers are great for slow-cooked meats or stews, and that wide surface area also makes it great for searing meats, and the dome lid makes it ideal for trapping in moisture. I use mine for cooking coq au vin in every year, which is a dish that we like to serve on Christmas Eve. Now, braziers are meant to be used oven to table, but you do need to have some kind of trivet to put down on your table. And I like this one also from Le Creuset because it's the same color and it creates a really nice coordinated look. You'll notice the beautiful ironwork, which is inspired by the ironwork of France, and I love the elevated design to it. I think it creates a really nice, elegant presentation for a buffet. So we're gonna place our egg bake in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 30 minutes. You just wanna make sure that the eggs are set and aren't jiggling in the center before you take it out. And then once your eggs are done, you can take them out of the oven and garnish with 2 tablespoons of fresh basil. It just adds such a delicious Italian flavor to all of the other things that are inside, and it also just looks so festive too. And then to serve, I like to cut these eggs into wedges, almost like a pie. And when you take it out, you'll see the texture, how light and fluffy these eggs are, mixed with that delicious, flavorful sausage, the roasted red peppers, and of course, the cheesiness of the mozzarella. It is such a delicious casserole on Christmas morning. So let's tackle the hash brown cups. Now let's face it, making hash browns for a crowd on Christmas morning sounds like a good idea until you actually go ahead and try it. It's a ton of work. That's why I really like this technique because we are gonna make them in muffin tins. It also works for feeding a big crowd of people because you're gonna get 12 portions in one muffin tin. Let me show you how easy this recipe is. So what makes this even easier is we are gonna be working with store-bought hash browns. So you wanna make sure that you get the kind that are unseasoned because we're gonna add our own flavoring. You also want to make sure that your hash browns are defrosted first. So it's a good thing once you come home from the store, just pop them in the fridge and they'll be good to go. So we're going to add 6 cups of the hash browns to a large bowl. And if they have a little bit of moisture to them, it's a good idea to go in there with a kitchen towel and just sop up some of that moisture. We wanna make sure that our hash browns are nice and dry so that they'll crisp up in the oven. Otherwise, they'll just steam up and you'll have just kind of hot potatoes on your hands and it won't really crisp up. Then we're gonna add 3 tablespoons of olive oil, a teaspoon of salt, and some freshly cracked pepper. And then we're also gonna add a cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese and 2 sliced scallions, the green parts and the white parts. And that's all there is to it. How easy is that? And then you're gonna toss this all up until everything is nice and combined. And if you find that the hash browns look a little bit dry, you can add a little bit more olive oil. The idea is to make sure that it's well coated because it's the olive oil that's gonna make these nice and crispy. So now let's talk muffin tins. I'm working with Nordic Ware's copper muffin tin, and I love this design because not only is it beautiful, but it has some nice features to it. So it's completely non-stick, which is a good thing to do when you're making hash browns like this, because you do want them to be able to just pop out of the tin. And then it also has silicone grips to it, which makes it really easy to handle in and out of the oven. If you're not familiar with Nordic Ware, they make a great line of baking equipment. I love their tins and baking molds. They're really high quality and will last the test of time. And then to prep our muffin tin, we are gonna be using an olive oil spray. So this is something that you can pick up in the grocery store, usually in the olive oil aisle, or sometimes it's near the baking sprays. It's just plain olive oil, but it comes in a spray, which makes it really easy for spraying a muffin tin like this. Now you could use straight olive oil, but there's something about the spray that makes it a really light finish, so you don't put too much. And then I like to go in with a pastry brush and just make sure that all that olive oil is well distributed. Then, using an ice cream scoop, we're going to pack in those hash browns. So you do want to make sure that the hash browns are really nicely packed in because they do shrink a little bit once they cook, so you want to make sure you have a really full cup. So just pack them in there. Then for the final step, we're just going to take that olive oil spray again and just give a little spritz to the top of each of the hash brown cups, and then they're ready for the oven. Then we're gonna bake our hash browns at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 40 to 45 minutes. Now, I say that if you're only making the hash brown cups and you just wanna make these, that's what you would do. If you are making these hash brown cups on Christmas morning in connection with this entire menu, then stay tuned for my game plan because there's a little bit different way of cooking them that's going to allow this whole menu to come out together. So stay tuned for that. You'll know that they're done once they start to get nice and golden brown around the edges and crispy on top. And then once they're done, you can just pop them out of their tins, and I like to put them on a plate. And then I also like to garnish with another sliced scallion, which you can slice on the bias because it'll create really pretty slices for you, and you can just sprinkle those all over the plate. And see, doesn't that look pretty? And so delicious too. I love this recipe because it provides for really crispy hash browns with hardly any effort. When you bite into these, you'll see that crispy exterior mixed with that soft and fluffy interior of the potato. It is the perfect potato side dish to go with our Christmas brunch. Next, I'm going to show you how to make this delicious maple-glazed rosemary bacon. It is the simplest recipe yet. Let me show you how easy it is. So to make our bacon in the oven, we are going to be working with Nordic Ware's oven bacon pan. I love this pan because it keeps the bacon raised while you're baking it, and because bacon can be messy, it catches all the drippings below. And then of course we're going to be adding our maple syrup to our bacon, which can make for an even messier process. So it's really great that that bacon stays raised because then it also stays nice and crispy that way. The rack is also non-stick, which allows for your bacon to release easily after it's baked. And then for easy cleanup, we are going to line our pan with some aluminum foil. So now that our pan is all ready to go, we are going to line it with 8 slices of bacon. Then we're going to place this bacon in a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 15 minutes. And then meanwhile, in a small bowl, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of pure maple syrup and 1 teaspoon of freshly minced rosemary. And then at the 15-minute mark, once your bacon is nice and crispy, you're then going to brush the maple syrup glaze on top of the bacon. And I'm using this silicone brush by Trudeau. I love these silicone brushes anytime I'm brushing meat that's not quite cooked because they go right in the dishwasher. The large bristles hold a lot of liquid, so you can get a lot of maple syrup on there. And it comes with a little tool rest, which makes it nice for the prep. So I typically will brush all the bacon just on one side because I love having that combination of the sweet and the salty, and it makes it easier because you don't have to flip the bacon while it's in the oven. But I do like to do 2 coats. So I go up once and then back once, And then it goes back in the oven for another 5 minutes. And what that's gonna do is bake that maple syrup into the bacon, which creates a really nice smooth surface and prevents the bacon from being too sticky. Then once it's done, you can pull the bacon out of the oven, place it on a plate, and then I do like to garnish with a big sprig of rosemary. And that's all there is to it. And you've got that combination of the sweet and the salty and the little hint of rosemary. It's the perfect type of fancy bacon that's wonderful served on Christmas morning. Okay, so if you'd like to make this festive Christmas brunch, here's your game plan. So the day before, you're gonna make the cranberry crumb cake, bake, and allow it to cool completely. Then leave it at room temperature, covered in foil. Next, you can prepare the oatmeal. Simmer the oatmeal in the water, add the apples, allow it to cool, and then cover and refrigerate. To prep the egg bake, you can cook the sausage, drain and transfer to an airtight container. Cut your peppers and put those in a container. Then in a large bowl, you can mix together the egg batter, add everything except the sausage and the peppers. You're gonna add those right before baking. You can mix together the hash browns, parcel them out in the muffin tin, don't forget to grease the muffin tin, and then cover and refrigerate. You can mix together your maple syrup and rosemary for the bacon, cover and pop in the fridge. And the way that I like to set this out is I designate my entire dining room table for this. I put a beautiful centerpiece in the middle. So I'm really inspired by colonial America during Christmas time, and I love to use oranges and cloves and evergreens. And this stunning tower was made by my dad, who is like the aficionado when it comes to Christmas decorations. And he's gonna actually come on the channel in a few weeks and show us how to make this Christmas decoration. So you can stay tuned for that. And then I also like to set out some evergreen, some oranges studded with cloves, some pears, and a few persimmons tucked in here and there. And I think that makes for a really lovely setting for a Christmas buffet. And you can eat all the fruit afterwards, so you didn't waste any money on flowers. Now, for the morning of, you want to get up just a little bit earlier than everybody else and do 2 things. You want to preheat your oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit to reheat the crumb cake. Then you want to place your cake covered in the foil for 10 minutes just to warm through. Then remove the foil and allow it to bake for another 5 minutes or so, just to crisp up the topping. Meanwhile, you can remove the oats from the fridge, heat them on the stovetop for 5 minutes or so, just until hot. Transfer them to your slow cooker and set it on low. Then you can set out all your toppings. Then when everybody wakes up, they'll be treated to a delicious part 1 of your Christmas buffet. Then when everybody starts nibbling on part 1, you can start to prep part 2. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Place the bacon and the hash browns in the oven together for 15 minutes. At that point, brush the bacon with the maple syrup and bake for another 5 minutes. Remove the bacon and allow it to rest at room temperature, resting just on its rack. The bacon does not need to be served hot. In fact, I think it's even better at room temperature. So you can just let it rest there on your cooktop until ready to serve. Then leave your hash browns in the oven and reduce the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Add the sausage and the peppers to your egg batter and pour it into your greased skillet or brazier. Bake your egg bake in with the hash browns at the same time, and you're gonna bake for 30 to 35 minutes. You might want to go a little bit longer because you've got 2 things in the oven at the same time. So that's why I say 35 minutes. And what will happen is those hash browns will continue to bake and get nice and crispy. And then they'll both be ready at the same time. One piece of advice, make sure that whatever you're gonna bake your eggs in fits in the oven at the same time with your muffin tin. You can do this the day before just with the dishes that are empty, just to make sure they go together, because this isn't the kind of thing you wanna find out on Christmas morning that they don't actually fit. Then you can make room on your buffet for your main course and your side dishes, and everybody can serve themselves to a hearty and delicious brunch. So there you have it, my festive Christmas brunch menu, sure to keep everybody well fed until Christmas dinner. I hope you guys give this one a try and let me know what you think. And special thanks to the Inspired Home website for sponsoring and collaborating with me on this series. It has been such fun to bring these specials back. And for all the printed recipes, as well as more information on the products I use today, you can head to their website. The link is in the description. All right, you guys, if I don't see you before then, have a very happy and Merry Christmas, and I will see you back here next time. Until then, bye.